Alright, kita boleh mula ya. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, assalamualaikum and good morning everyone, and to all the audience and participants that we have today. First of all, I would like to apologize because the technical error today. It seems that my tablet was not cooperative just now, so I'm very sorry for that. And inshallah, I think it's okay now, and StreamYard is cooperative with me. So for today, I am Muhammad Noor, final year biomedical science from Kuliah of Allied Health Science will be the moderator for today. So inshallah, first of all, to gain the blessing and barakah for this session, we will begin our session today with the recitation of Furqan Al-Fatiha. Right, and in order to gain further blessing for today's session, I would like to invite Brother Muhammad Faris Noor to recite the dua for today's session.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم إن الدحاء دحاؤك والبهاء بهاؤك والجمال جمالك والقوة قوتك والقدرة قدرتك والعصمة عصمتك اللهم إن كان رزقي في السماء فأنزله وإن كان في الأرض فأخرجه وإن كان معسرا فيسره وإن كان حراما فطهره وإن كان بعيدا فقربه بحق دحائك وبهائك وجمالك وقوتك وقدرتك آتني ما آتيت عبادك الصالحين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Brother Muhammad Faris Noor, for the prayer recitation. Alright, so inshallah today we are going to discuss interesting concern, yet still an ongoing, we call as concern, especially in COVID-19 era in Malaysia, especially. Sorry. So we will be discussing the title of the truth Untold, domestic violence during COVID-19 era. But before that, I was notified by our committee that we have a special video that has been prepared. So I think we can proceed with the video first. So I hope everyone can enjoy the video, but please have the meaning experienced by all of us too. Alright, thank you very much committee for the video presentation. I hope everyone is still okay after watching the video. Alright, that's a bit insight about our today's concern, and I believe that is also our partial reality of today's society. So before we move on to the highlight part of this forum or this webinar, first of all, I would like to introduce our speaker, distinguished and established speaker for today, because we are honored by the presence of these two speakers. So allow me to introduce one by one. So the first speaker is Assistant Professor Dr. Shamsina Muhammad Hanifah, who is respected lecturer from ICOL, Kuliah of Law, IIUM. She is expertise in criminal law. She has been teaching IIUM Gombak for around 5 years now, if I'm not mistaken, inshallah, since 2015. And before joining IIUM, she was a researcher and with Malaysia Human Rights Commission, Suhakam, Human Rights Commission kan? Okay. She completed both her LLB and Master of Comparative Law at IIUM and pursued a PhD from Putra Business School, University Putra Malaysia, UPM. She has also produced a book and written a few articles which have been published. Okay, so thank you for coming, Dr. Shamsina. I hope you're okay today. How are you today, Doctor?
Alhamdulillah, I am supposed to be okay because today is my birthday.
Oh, wow. Oh, happy birthday, Doctor. Happy birthday,
Thank
Doctor.
you, thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Today is a very special day. All right. So, thank you. Next, our second speaker is Prof. Dr. Najibah Muhammad Zain. She obtained LLB in 1988 and started her career as lecturer in Kuliah of Law tu, Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Law, ICOL, in Gombak. Soon after her graduation, she obtained her Master of Comparative Law in 1990 and pursued her doctorate in Glasgow Caledonian University, United Kingdom in 1995. So as lecturer, she taught various subjects of civil and sharia law, including law of contract, law torts, land law, Islamic legal system, family law, and sharia procedures. Wow, that's a very vast background. And at present, Prof. Najibah is specializing in family-related laws and women's rights. So I think we have very specific background which are very meaningful for today's session. So welcome, Prof. How are you, Prof, today?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right, thank you very much, Prof, for accepting our invitation too. Okay, so I think everyone already a bit closer to our speaker now. So before we move on, maybe I will bring our audience and all of us to be a bit closer to our topic for today. So so we can understand what our topic and forum can actually mean to bring today. So according to Women's Aid Organization Malaysia, domestic violence can be defined as a pattern of violence, abuse, or intimidation used to control or maintain power over a partner, meaning someone else in the relationship who is or has been in an intimate relationship. Fundamentally, domestic violence is about power and control lah. Normally, we used to hear about man over woman, right? And according to WHO, during this devastating COVID-19 situation, especially in COVID-19 era, people are encouraged to be quiet and encouraged to stay at home. Therefore, it opens the risk more to the another we can say as a partner to his or her partner, and therefore domestic violence is increasing, especially starting the MCO during the MCO. And it also stated that violence against women is highly prevalent and intimate partner violence is the most common form of violence. So, okay, I think everyone just maybe what are the further definition of domestic violence and so on. So maybe we can start with our first question. So maybe I will begin first to Dr. Shamshina, Dr. Sham, especially during your birthday. I'm sorry because I have to ask this question. So the first question is actually, what is actually domestic violence according to you, Doctor? And normally, what are the victims? And is there the types or example of domestic violence according to your opinion, Doctor? So I pass to you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Anwar Muhammad Noor, our moderator for today's virtual forum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And salam sejahtera to respected panelists, Prof. Dr. Najibah Muhammad Zain, biomedical science students in particular, students of law and ethics, and my dear respected FB viewers. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to fourth year students of Department of Biomedical Science of Allied Health Science Students Society, or known as HEALS, IIUM Kuantan campus, for organizing this timely forum. Okay, addressing the question raised by Mr. Moderator, okay, what is meant by domestic violence? It is basically defined as violence between intimate couples living together or who have previously cohabited. It is also known as partner abuse, where it covers both married and unmarried couples. Hence, it goes on to say that the victims of domestic violence can be those in two categories: married as well as non-married couples. Okay. Wife abuse, on the other hand, refers to beatings of married women by their husbands, and spouse abuse refers to both situations whereby husband or wife can be the victim. Okay. We also have terminology like wife battering. Wife battering is something extraordinary, possibly resulting in severe injury, incapacity, or even death. In battering, a batterer uses both assault and non-assault behaviors, which over time have the effect of dominating, controlling, and inducing fear or subservience in the partner. Okay, domestic violence can occur when a male is assaulted by his female partner, or vice versa, or between individuals of the same sex who are living together as a couple. On the other hand, it may also include all assaults committed by persons who are currently involved, be it legally married or otherwise, apart from attacks by ex-spouses and former lovers who are part of the history, means no longer part of the household. Okay, so domestic violence can be taken to mean domestic abuse lah. And this is because violence can be in many forms of abuses, be it physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, destruction of property, harming of pets, socio-cultural abuse, and also economic abuse. So most of these forms of abuse happen behind closed doors, and usually the victim suffers silently. It may continue for years, on some occasions result in the death of either the victim or the perpetrator. Okay, we go to the first type of abuse, physical abuse. It can be like hitting, kicking, slapping, or assault using household objects like broom handle, or using weapon like gun or knife. Physical abuse can be further classified into four: immediate injury that heal, leaving no trace of injuries or scars. Okay. And then the second one, injuries leaving visible scars that you can see obviously on the face. The third one, unknown long-term physical injuries. This is something that is internal or disease lah, under section 319 of the Penal Code. It can be, HIV, syphilis, AIDS. Okay. And the fourth category is long-term catastrophic injuries. For example, losing an arm or leg. Okay. The second type of abuse is sexual abuse. On the other hand, which occurs between married couples, where the abuser or perpetrator demands sexual activity without the woman's consent. And this usually occurs when a man assumes that it is his right and privilege to have sexual intercourse whenever he wishes and in any form he desires. Okay. The third type of abuse, psychological or emotional abuse, is often difficult to define. It includes hurling ridicule, okay, like throwing mockery, like what we have seen in the teaser just now, insults, like macam badak tadi tu, okay, accusations, engaging in infidelity. Infidelity tu maksudnya betrayal, okay, and ignoring the partner, okay, all of which erode the victim's self-esteem and self-worth, where they don't feel like they are worth for their partner. Okay, And then we also have destruction of property and cruelty towards pets, which can be seen when abuser, for example, throw dishes, small appliances, or other objects at the spouse, or he may go on rampage and destroy household property, as well as killing the family pet. The destruction is done on purpose, and the psychological impact on the victim may be devastating as that of physical attack. Okay, that means similar to physical attack. All right, and then as far as the economic or financial abuse is concerned, it refers to withholding economic support in which the perpetrator maintains tight control of economic resources, such as the family checkbook, cash, and also the car. And in some cases, it happened when the abuser does not allow the victim to go out to work, creating economic dependency. Okay. It is also worthy to note, in some jurisdictions, they may have broader definition of violence in line with cultural norms of a particular country. Like India, its Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 includes harm or injuries to the aggrieved person to meet with any unlawful demand for dowry. Okay. In South Africa, it's Domestic Violence Act 1998. The scope of emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse includes repeated exhibition of obsessive possessiveness or jealousy. Okay, all right. I would like to share the latest statistic that I've gotten, actually less than 24 hours from Bukit Aman. Okay, the number of cases reported this year, as far as domestic violence is concerned, is actually not higher than last year. Okay, not higher. From January up to November this year, there are altogether 4,754 cases reported. Okay, though December is yet to be counted in, I believe the figure will not be higher than 2019. Okay. Last year, it was 5,529 cases. In 2018, 5,421 cases. In 2017, it was 5,513 cases. In 2016, 5,796 cases. In fact, it is the highest reported cases in one decade, 2016, yeah? And in 2015, it was 5,014 cases. Okay, at least 14 motives have been identified as the reason that causes domestic violence. And the crucial one, top 3 lah, for 2020 is misunderstanding, 1,976 cases, followed by drug abuse, 773 cases, and financial issues, 628 cases. Okay. Other motives are betrayal, jealousy, alcoholism, divorce proceedings, depression, and children-related problems. Okay, for this year, it can be seen that depression shows a hike, with 337 cases reported nationwide, compared to last year with only 84 cases. Okay, top 3 leading states as far as domestic violence is concerned for year 2020 are sad to inform. Topping the rank is Selangor. Okay, we cannot leave the group, yeah, Selangor, and then followed by Sarawak and also Johor. And top 3 leading months for this year are October, November, and January. That means in these 3 cases, the cases on domestic violence show an increase, high trend lah. Okay, I hope I have addressed Mr. Anwar's question for this initial round. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. And I believe it's pretty much shows us a deeper insight about what are actually the domestic violence. And I believe there is new knowledge for me as well personally and to audience as well. And itulah, it's sad to know that Selangor cannot leave the group yet. Not only the group of WhatsApp, the higher trend of the COVID, but also the higher trend of the domestic violence. So it's very sad to know lah. Even though we have plenty of people say the education institution, we still have that concern as well. So it's also interesting to know the concern of that misunderstanding is become the top concern and become the top factors of the domestic violence. Maybe next we can have a greater understanding about this issue. I think we will have a deeper and deeper understanding when we go through the questions. So maybe my next question is to Prof. Najibah. In your opinion, Prof, on the rise of domestic violence during this COVID-19 era, especially, what is, in your view, according to the rise of the cases and its effects on the married couples, children or others, perhaps from the side of the physical, psychological, and emotional effects, Prof?
Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jefferson. And I would like to say happy birthday also to my dear sister, Dr. Shamsina. And Salam alaikum to all biomedical students in final year in Kuantan. Yeah, I think at this time of the year, we are about to enter into exam period. Yeah, I suppose that um, you must be somehow in a stress mode as well. Yeah, so hopefully talking something about this topic at this time of the year. Yeah, um, it is quite serious matter, to discuss, but at the same time it is good to know so that we are able to take care of ourselves, reflect ourselves. And because as what Dr. Sham already mentioned just now, domestic violence is very much associated to what we are, how do we grow up, how do we actually brought up by our family and so on. So, having identified what are actually the causes that lead to domestic violence, so when we talk about COVID at the time of this pandemic, and of course it make things worse, lah. Yeah, it make things worse. Why? Because of the stay at home order. Yeah, stay at home order particularly. Yeah, keep the partners or the husband and wife, not just only husband and wife, and we could see from the reports that from the teaser just now, issues relating to the parental abuse, elderly abuse, all these things actually become a phenomenon. So as we see that domestic violence is not just only a Malaysian issue, it is a global issue, cut across as what we could see here, gender, cut across countries, education. It is not about just an education. This is all about ourself, inner self that we are talking about. So when people cannot go out with the home, what they call it, stay at home order, so it become worse because why? Yeah, because when a person is being confined to a certain particular place, for example, we have to stay at home. If people have a bigger house, I mean, maybe that is not that uh, aggravating so much in terms of that. But you can just imagine people who live in a small place, maybe in a small apartments or flat, or maybe in whatever situations that will cause tension. So it creates a lot of tension. People worry about security. People worry about their health. How about if I will be infected? And then worry about financial issues, which basically is the one of the main factors that cause domestic violence. Yeah? But the question is why, let's say during MCO, it become worse. is it not something these issues originated from what they call it, maybe before the pandemic itself? Well, the thing is, if we were to go into the reasons why domestic violence happen, maybe I could cite a few. For example, we have seen how physical violence happen, how economic abuse happen, how sexual abuse happen, and how the psychological emotional abuse happen. And me myself, I have to get involved with clients who experience all these violence at one time. Yeah, and unfortunately, or maybe we cannot say fortunate or unfortunate in these situations, but it is involved our own students, even though it is not a local students, it comes from other countries, but to some extent, you can really see this thing happen in her family, and it is caused by her own husbands. And this is part of the culture in that particular society where violence is a norm. So, so we'll see that the problem with what do you call it? One of the reasons why people commit violence is because of the upbringings. I don't want to highlight this upbringing because it concerns with all of us how we actually brought up by our family. So from the social study, the intergenerational violence. Intergenerational violence refers to if actually a person live in a family where the family itself, maybe father or the mother, violence or abuse, abuse. So it goes to the children. The children live in the violence environment. The children grown up that what they call abuse attitudes in hers or in him. It could be woman, it could be man. So in our society now, madam, come across not just only women who become the victims. Nowadays, men also becomes the victims because of the gaps in what you call it, gaps in mostly related to financial gaps, educational gaps between husband and wife, particularly. So that creates somehow um, some kinds of it develops some kinds of what they call it, certain kinds of attitude of disrespect, attitudes of intolerance. And then what more in the situations when religion is not what you call it, the focus of that family, for example. So people follow their culture. So culture play a very important role in generating this violence. So, for example, I give you one example of my client. This is our students, your super seniors. As Dr. Sham already mentioned, why Selangor represents always the highest because the population in Selangor, density of population in Selangor is higher than any other place. So coming back to the case that Madam want to tell you just now, it happens at one point of time when I have this girl came to my office here, and she complained about a situation when she has been abused by the husband. Husband also was our students. And this is all educated people who already graduated with flying colors. They get a good job in companies or even either in private or public sectors. Then and she said she has been abused. She can't really communicate to the husband. Yeah? And I said to her, sexually abused. That's something common, but it is quite difficult to explain. To be, like in the teaser just now. This is something sometimes where women, it's not that easy to talk about. So in that case, she experienced sexual violence. She experienced physical violence, even though it is not so much of financial violence because she also earns. But all these things, she said to me that I feel embarrassed to get people to come to my house because everything's not in a proper order. You can just understand, any simple fault that will become that it follows with violence. So I said to her that, did you make any police report, any medical report, And she said, I didn't do any of those. And the most that she did, whenever she has been hit by the husband, she just took a car, go through, take a walk, something like that. That's what you call it, take a drive or take a walk and come back again. Yeah? So give a signal to the other, to the husband that, oh, my wife will not do anything. Yeah? My wife will not do anything. So it gives, what they call it now, it aggravates further. Yeah. So the husband thinks that it is not wrong for him to hit because he has been grown up in that violent situation. So so when someone grown up in that violent situation, he didn't know that it is wrong. Yeah. So because he thought this is normal, natural, cultural, and accepted as a norm in the family. So I said to her, if that is a situation, can you communicate that you want a divorce? Because at that time she said that I have no love anymore, no feeling at all. Okay, so can you communicate? She said, I cannot communicate with she even cannot communicate with the husband. And then I said, if you cannot communicate with the husband, can you write a letter to him, stating that what you are now, what do you want, blah blah blah. Then she took the courage of writing a letter. She wrote a letter to the husband. Maybe nowadays people use WhatsApp lah, apa semua lah kan. Tapi Madam rasa if you use WhatsApp ke, it aggravates further because you can't actually relate the matter very well. So when she wrote that letter, when the husband read that letter, he turned completely. So it was really lucky in this situation because being a person with such kind of educated background, luckily that he realized that what he did all this while was wrong. Yeah? Then she came back to me. And asked me whether I should pursue my intentions to go for a divorce. I said, why not you give him another chance? And then basically in that case he changed. He completely changed. Yeah? And then they actually continue living together until now. So I think so far it's not that easy to get this kind of situation. Maybe one in 1,000. I really don't know. People can change. People can change. So this is the situations, and we can't just imagine how the life that she went through can affect the children. Yeah, can affect her marital life should the husband doesn't change. Yeah? So here we could see that the study shows that what you call it, childhood maltreatment. Yeah, maltreatment includes what? Supervisions neglect, meaning that parents neglected the children. Yeah? We could see last time how the children in Keramat area, how they burn students in Tahfiz school and burn the place as well. And these children come from a family where the family neglected because of the financial constraint. Parents have to go to work, they have to think about survival. So the children were left on their own, and as a result, they involved in what they call it, not just only unlawful activities, but they themselves becomes a victim of neglect, being abandoned and so on. Yeah? So this neglect, childhood abuse, yeah, and all these things, what they call it, affect so much on how the children being brought by the family, and then at the end of the day, they what do you call it? They also become abuser later on to their own partner, not just only partners, but to the mothers, to the children, and so on. Yeah. So the disruptions in terms of the social support and other social services and so on, difficulty to get help. This is also another factors, meaning that when people live together, with the abuser, let's say one party is the abuser, then in the case of wife, for example, for her to get help from people outside there is a bit difficult lah, huh? So that's why when Dr. Sham mentioned about rate of domestic violence decreasing compared to the previous years, I think one of the factors it could be this violence has not been able to be communicated, yeah, because of the parties living together, so they cannot openly and cannot voice it out to others because of fear, because of the fear, yeah. And then another thing, maybe when we talk from the women perspective, I think women are also overburdened. So living in a patriarchal society, patriarchal, yeah, when male-dominated society. In our society, it is not about religion; it is about culture. Yeah, jadi normally women have to do a lot of works at home. Yeah, so they are overburdened with paid and unpaid job works. I know that, like me myself, for example, we have to work in the house. At the same time, we also have our own paid jobs. So to balance between the two with the multiple responsibilities and so on, it also aggravates the situations. I mean, imbalanced situations, then it will cause violence. So it is not surprising to see. Madam also got a case a few months back where women actually here using her vulgar words, abuse verbally. Yeah, this is abuse verbally. So it happens that she got a husband who is maybe soft kind of a person. Then female become dominant and abuse the husband as well. So we could see that all this situation, it is not a healthy environment. So with this unhealthy environment, of course, it caused a lot of, it gives a great impact to people around them, yeah? Especially children, or if let's say the parents stay together in the house, and of course it creates more tensions lah for the family to juggle, not just only to take care of the existing family, but also to the children as well as other extended families. Yeah. So I think in these situations, the ability to identify the root cause of the problems. So this is not to mention about drugs issues that has been discussed. So Madam also come across a number of clients where the husband involved in drugs, and then how irritating is situations when, even though it doesn't involve so much of the physical abuse, but sometimes husbands who involved in drugs, every day he will come closer to the wife asking for money, begging for money because he wants to buy drugs, kind of. He wants to buy drugs. So we also got cases like that. But drugs, of course, always leads to physical violence as well. Yeah? Okay, so I think, I don't know whether Madam still have time, but I think I better stop here for a while. Yeah, and I will continue that later. Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. I think that we can conclude that culture also remains the significant factor of normalizing the violence. Okay, maybe and then I think we can proceed to the next round. Okay, next round we will have the speakers, inshallah, around 8 minutes for the questions. So maybe we will proceed back to Dr. Sham back. In your opinion, Doctor, what are the criminal laws and ethics toward domestic violence? Doctor, maybe you can explain to us. Thank you. Doctor, you masih mute. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Okay. The government of Malaysia is very much concerned in dealing with the physical and sexual violence towards spouse, especially women. Okay? The Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development proves it when the government becomes part of the United Nations Convention member on the ground of elimination of all form of discrimination against women. We call it as CEDAW. By being a signatory to the International Convention, Malaysia has actually assumed the responsibility to provide, protect, and safeguard the rights of women and disapprove all forms and nature of discrimination against women, as discriminatory treatment is considered inhumane and degrading. You know why? Because it undermines the self-esteem of women in a society. There was a development of programs, legislation, and also education related to domestic violence. The government and non-governmental governmental organization or agencies, NGOs, were combined together to combat this act. Okay, prior to the coming into force of Domestic Violence Act, we call it as DVA lah. Reference was made to several provisions from different statutes. Statutes in Malay we call Akta. Among others are the Married Women Act 1957, originally known as Married Women Ordinance 1957, Law Reform Marriage and Divorce Act 1957 or LRA, Islamic Family Law Federal Territory Act, IFLA for Muslims, Penal Code, and also private prosecution. Okay, thus we can see that there are family-based law and criminal law enforceable in tackling domestic violence issues. Okay, but I will not be touching on family law aspect. Okay, dealing with penal code. Okay, the penal code in Malay we call Kanun Keseksaan. Okay, provide grounds for criminal liabilities. A spouse can be convicted for causing assault, criminal force, um, hurt or grievous hurt under section 352A, for instance, which provides punishment for using criminal force by a spouse. Section 326A also enshrine punishment for causing hurt to spouse, former spouse, etc. Section 375A specifically deals with husband causing hurt in order to have sexual intercourse. Okay. But we don't recognize marital rape. Okay, the penal code does not prevent a spouse from prosecuting the other spouse for a criminal offense. In other words, all the provisions in the penal code can be used against any violent husband or wife as much as it applies to any person generally. Okay, however, having said that, the penal code does not provide an order to exclude the abusive and violent husband from the matrimonial home. If the violent husband is the sole breadwinner of the family, there you go. Okay, there is a loss of income for the family. Thus, not much that the penal code can offer, as the act places more importance on punishing the offender. Okay, that's why we have this Domestic Violence Act, which was passed on 24th June 1994, and it was later amended 2 times in 2012 and also 2017. Basically, Domestic Violence Act, it complements penal code. Okay, it aims at providing necessary protection to victims of domestic violence. Okay, it is to be highlighted that Malaysia is the first country, okay, in ASEAN to have such act and has recognized that domestic violence is an issue of public concern. DVA, Domestic Violence Act, grants both civil and criminal remedies for the victims of domestic violence, irrespective of their race, religion, culture, and background. Okay. This act is to be read together with the penal code. It does not list down new crimes, but in fact provides extra protection for the safety of the victims. Okay. Domestic Violence Act, DVA, protects spouses, former spouses, children, and incapacitated adults or any member of a family For example, close relatives who are also included lah in this list. The Act covers wide range of violence including physical injury, okay, engaging in sexual conduct forcefully, confining or detaining the victim, psychological abuse, and causing damage to property. But we need to bear in mind, Domestic Violence Act does not extend its application to unmarried couples. Okay. Under Domestic Violence Act, the victim, for example, an abused wife can get protection inter alia, emergency protection order, EPO, interim protection order, IPO, and also the protection order itself lah, PO. Okay, let me briefly introduce you to these three terms. EPO, Emergency Protection Order, it allows social welfare officers to grant victims immediate protection against their abusers without the need to have a police report. The EPO can be issued within 2 hours after the application has been made, very fast. However, the EPO only lasts for 1 week or 7 days. If the perpetrator contravenes the EPO, he shall be guilty under Section 3E in bracket 1 of Domestic Violence Act. If he contravene by using violence, heavier penalty awaits him, okay, under a specific provision lah in Domestic Violence Act. Okay, the second one, Interim Protection Order, IPO. It may be applied by a wife pending police investigations. Upon application made by a wife, the court in granting it may include a provision prohibiting the person against whom the order is made from inciting any other person to commit domestic violence against the spouse or former spouse or a child or an incapacitated adult, etc. IPO ceases immediately upon the completion of investigation. And last but not least, protection order, PO. The court may grant protection order involving a complaint of domestic violence, restraining the abuser from inflicting domestic violence against the victim child and against incapacitated adult. Among the protection accorded is to exclude the abuser out of the matrimonial house or home, though the house is owned by the abuser. Okay, the court may also order the abuser not to have any written or telephone communication with the victim. A victim, on the other hand, may get an order to continue using the vehicle which the victim has used previously in her marriage. And all these orders, all the three, will be effective for a period not exceeding 12 months or 1 year from the date of the commencement of the order. And it may, however, be extended once. And power of arrest shall be attached by the courts to the PO protection order or interim protection order if the court is satisfied that the abuser is likely to cause actual physical injury to the battered wife. Okay, all right. I think I end here for this round.
Alright, thank you very much, Dr. Sham. And that's a very vast knowledge for me, and I believe our audience can also learn more from that, especially the protection orders. That's very new to us. Thank you very much, Doctor. And then proceed to next question to Prof. Najiba. In your opinion and your knowledge, Prof, what are the family laws and ethics related to domestic violence, Prof? Maybe you can
Thank
share
you
a
very
bit with
much,
that. Thank you.
my dearest son. Son and daughters. So because I'm already, you can just imagine, I joined university in 1988. Graduated in 1988. How old I am now? Okay, son and daughters. When we talk about family law, I would rather love to talk from my heart. because this is all about what do you call it? Private issues, private issues about love, about mercy, rahmah, wisdom, things like that. So ethically, when we talk from the family law perspective, see what Dr. Shah already mentioned just now. Yeah, what Dr. Shah already mentioned just now, how difficult it is all the process to go. And we know that the victims of domestic violence, when they come to us, complain, something like that, it is not that easy because this is basically involve all the processes, even though the help is there from the legal perspective, but it all need courage to come forward. So that's why, Madam Rasela, prevention is of course much better. So we need to have all, preventive measures. So family law is all about preventive measures, to bring back ourselves into what they call it, consciousness of what we are doing. So my dear son and daughters, you are getting married, inshallah. Maybe some of you have married or whatever. So the thing is, we need to make sure that when we enter into a marriage, it must be with our good and sincere intention. No, then with sincere intention in the sense that we want to marry for the sake of Allah, to follow the sunnah of the prophets, and to have generations to present us, to have someone, our children, to pray for us when we die, after we die. So this kind of a thing is very important. It looks very religious anyway, but this is actually part and parcel of us to educate ourselves, to educate ourselves. And then another thing, so when we actually clear ourselves, have a good intention, because everything begins with the intention. So, Madam, why I need to emphasize this, because when I meet with my clients, I have hundreds of clients that come to our clinic. We could see that religious consciousness is very, very important, to safeguard us. And and then in marriage, it is very important, and this is part of family law. In marriage, it is very, very important that a husband and wife understand their responsibilities, because marriage is about responsibilities. So if the husband has to provide financial needs for the family, now wife is working as well, assisting. Wife is assisting, but the husband is the primary caregiver, the primary financial provider to the family. So we have to understand that. We have to understand this is our responsibility. So it is our duty to provide financial needs to the family. Now, in our court, for example, we could see almost like 70% of the cases that went to the court, divorce proceedings being filed in the court because of maintenance, non-payment of maintenance. This is part of what we call it economic abuse. Economic abuse. Because when the father or the husband does not provide sufficient needs for the family, and you could see that how the children are affected, how the wife is affected. So in that context, we need to understand the very concept of the marriage itself is about what they call it. Both parties must understand about their responsibilities. So responsibilities of the husband to provide what they call it, financial needs, and responsibility of the wife to manage the household. Even though she's working, but she need to manage. But it doesn't mean that the husband and wife cannot cook together, cannot work together in the house. Each and everyone must support the family, must do the job collectively. So we could see how the Prophet himself did his things, manage his personal things. So why we need to be one man show in the house? Why need to enslave someone in the family? So the one that Madam mentioned just now, the case that Madam mentioned just now, I asked her, what happens to you? Because she said, I feel that I've not done enough to the family. This is what the wife said. I said, what have you done in the family? So I asked her, tell me. She said that every day she has to make sure that whenever the husbands go to work, she put socks on the table, on the what you call it, on the bed, and she has to make sure that everything prepared for the husband. And she said, the worst part of it is she said, I went down and then what do you call it? Start the engine of the car. I said, you what? What did you do? I said, I think this is basically enslave. You enslave yourself. Yeah, this is something that the husband should do, not the wife should do. You enslave yourself. That's why he treat you like that. Yeah? Okay, this is just one example. One example. So the Quran and the Hadith, and of course the ulama teach us on how to respect one another. So when we identify, for example, in domestic violence is about gender, about gender, being man and being a woman. So the difficulty to manage this gender relationship, basically, that's why the Quran emphasized that. So that's why the hadith, for example, I mean, we can take, for example, the Quranic verse. I think in Surah An-Nisa, Allah says, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah says to the husbands, treat your wife kindly. Why it says to the husband, treat your wife kindly? Because psychologically, if the husband treat the wife kindly and provide her with sufficient means, then the wife will respond kindly. That's actually when this is what we mean by reciprocal relationship between the husband and wife. If both actually treat each other kindly, but if one did not treat the other person kindly after everything has been provided for, this is something has to do with the upbringing just now. We need to look at the upbringing of a person. So just recently, Madam was actually having have to handle a case where the whole family actually, from the mother and the father and the son, were very, very abusive. So it affects the other family to the extent that you can just imagine when someone can spit to the father-in-law. This is the kind of a thing that happens in our society now. So we are now in a sick generation, sick, S-I-C-K, sick generation. And this is what has been said by Imam Al-Ghazali. Imam Al-Ghazali, the author of Ihya Ulumuddin. Our generation is being classified as a very sick generation, where we could see all the problems faced in our society actually resulted from what do you call it? Because we are far away from what do you call it? From our religion. We are far away from people who can guide us. So everything is on our fingertips. So Google becomes our main reference. All the sick ideologies, false ideologies become our reference. So that's why part of it actually contributed to what we are now. Okay, so the family law, basically when we refer to the Quran and the Hadith, teach us about even we are in conflict, because when in marriage, people, we cannot expect that everybody being so kind all the time. There's always leap and bounds. The what you call it, the Malay proverb says that lagi kan lidah lagi tergigit, something like that, which is popular in P. Ramlee's punya song, which is correct. But even that, the Quran teaches us on how to settle that, how to settle our marital conflicts amicably. Seek the guidance from the elderly, seek the guidance from people who can guide us, but not to put aside, brush aside, kidnap the child, for example, refusing one party from seeing the child. This is all a kind of abuse that happen in our society now. So when we say settle amicably, don't fight. Try to understand what is actually the problem. So one of the things that which is good, if let's say we have misunderstanding, we know that misunderstanding was the highest, or represents the highest form of domestic violence. Not only about domestic violence, but the highest form of reasons for the divorce in our country. So misunderstanding could be interpreted in many ways, but misunderstanding is something where the marriage can be safe if people get is able to get the advice, correct advice from the right people. That's why Madam said right people, not people who can aggravate further the relationship. So advice, coming back to the teaching of Islam, what actually Islam expects. But the most important thing is that I think what is lacking in the young couple nowadays, especially young couple, because the statistics that we get from the LPPKN, who gathered the data for the young, especially among young couples. Young couple includes, I'm not young anymore, lah, of course, but your generations who got married, those who are married less than 5 years, less than five, they are considered as young couple. I'm not talking about minor marriage here. I'm talking about young couples. 35% end up in a divorce. Why? So one thing from the legal perspective, from the study that we have conducted, of course, we are lacking of the support system. We don't have support system like counselling, for example, which is very, very important. So that's why, Madam, is very sad to see that in our Domestic Violence Act, the recent amendment, they remove counselling from the provisions, which is very, very important, and replace that with rehabilitation. But actually, counseling and rehabilitation both are important in the context of what do you call it, bringing up or the self-esteem in one's life. But this has been removed, maybe because of the culture lah. Madam pun tak faham. Okay, so the counselings, reconciliations, and mediations, all these are important to bring the parties back together, and of course with good intentions. That's why the Quran says very clearly, you should not, even if, let's say, parties divorce, even they have to go for divorce amicably. Don't fight. Don't fight. Go for an amicable solution, so that maybe you are not meant to live in one roof, but it's okay, especially when they have children. Settle matters amicably. After all, as a human being, we cannot live in conflict. We cannot bring the conflict in us until we become old. That is not good. So whatever it is, settle everything once and for all. Have the idea of, mutual consultations. Have the idea of mutual consent. Have the idea of amicable settlement. I think that is, whatever the situation is, have that make that as a culture. So I think in the context of family law, for example, it is very important for the husband and wife to have this gender sensitivity. Being a husband, Allah says, al-muslimun wal-musliman, ba'duhum awliya ba'd. Maknanya we need to help each other. We have to support each other. They are all equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we are different basically only on the duties, on our responsibilities, because the idea is we need to complement each other. So that's what family law is all about. Okay, so I think I end up here. I will add on if there's any questions further on this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. That's very the basic. I think the advice comes from Prof actually to have a amicable solution and settlement. So thank you very much. And I think we are proceeding to the last round. Okay, inshallah. And I hope we can have a more meaningful discussion after this, because we will be opening the Q&A session after that. So the first question I will be asking to Dr. Shamsina back. So maybe according to Doctor, what should be done when we are facing domestic violence, and what are the ways to prevent this type of violence? So thank you, Doctor.
That's a very good question, Mr. Moderator. But I think I would like to add a little bit on the ethical
Sure.
parts for the second question. Okay, as far as ethics is concerned, the principle of respect for persons incorporate two fundamental ethical principles that are respect for autonomy and protection of vulnerable person. Okay. In domestic violence cases, it is actually fundamental to avoid tagging the victim with negative stigma, especially after they have been going through a series of nightmares. And protecting privacy and also confidentiality is another essential ethical consideration to ensure both women's safety and also data quality. Apart from that, consent of the victim is also to be sought, especially if it involves studies on the routine intimate partner violence screening. Okay, um, that's as far as ethics is concerned. Okay, coming back to the third question posed by Anwar. First and foremost, okay, what can be done? Or yeah, what can be done when the victim is facing domestic violence is to seek protection. Okay, the law on domestic violence seems to be well revised from time to time based on the changing need of the society. And the punishments provided are also sufficient. As has been mentioned earlier, Domestic Violence Act A, DVA, offers three types of protection, namely EPO, IPO, and also PO. Okay. Secondly, to receive a strong support system. Okay, this is very crucial in assisting the victim to lessen the hardship they have endured, for example, employment benefits. Okay, in Philippines, yeah, for instance, the victims are entitled to take paid leave of absence. An employer who denies this right shall be penalized according to the provision. Okay, and then the third one, resorting to mediation and reconciliation. These are among the measures that could be undertaken to promote resolution between parties. I give one example. In Republic of Ghana, the courts play an important role in promoting reconciliation in a criminal trial involving domestic violence. Okay, fourthly, seeking monetary relief from the husband could be of much assistance. And we have this clearly being spelled out in Section 10, Clause 1 of Domestic Violence Act, which provides for compensation for personal injuries or damage to property or financial loss as a result of the domestic violence. Okay, so in Malay we call this is hak-hak yang termaktub dalam undang-undang. Okay, fifthly, attending rehabilitation programs. Okay, an order to refer the victim to a rehabilitation program shall be made only with the consent of the victim as provided in Section 11, Clause 1 of Domestic Violence Act. Okay. Attending the second question posed by Mr. Anwar, how to prevent this type of violence? Okay. We have to go back to the root cause of this problem, I believe. Okay. Alcohol and drug abuse, they are considered as one of the causes that contribute to domestic violence. Okay, individuals who use alcohol and drugs are more prone to violence than those who do not. Okay, financial management is also important, especially with the rise of unemployment, where many are laid off. Okay, ever since pandemic COVID-19 started spreading all over the world. Okay, public awareness in understanding domestic violence is also important in order to combat the social ill. Conservative beliefs about privacy, the sanctity of marriage, shame and fear compound the difficulty victims face when seeking assistance. The community, whether men, women, and children, should know about and be familiar with domestic violence. heightening awareness on the impact of domestic violence to the public will enable the society to respond appropriately to the support systems that are available, such as the legal system, the welfare department, police, and also hospitals. I think that's all for the last round.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Shamsina. And I believe in conjunction with the point given by Dr. Shamsina, which is the public awareness, maybe I would like to ask this question to Prof. Najibah. How to, in your opinion, Prof, how to educate the family on, especially about the domestic violence, and in your opinion, what are the roles of Islamic laws for this violence prevention, Prof? Thank you in advance, Prof.
Okay, thank you for the questions, uh, apa, Anwar, ya. Okay, so actually, Madam already just mentioned in passing just now, yeah, in terms of what we call it, how to educate the family, because education is something continuous and it must come with one important thing, is that knowledge. Yeah, knowledge is very, very important. Knowledge about marital relationships, marriage, about what violence is. And what we discussed today is actually part of our effort to understand, what violence is and so on. Yeah. But I think the most important things that the Madam want to elaborate a little bit about the understanding about the gender relationship. Yeah? This is something which is always negligible in our society, where when we go into marriage, normally we do not take into considerations, or we do not maybe realize that um, how complex is the relationship. Yeah? So normally when we go into marriage, we thought that, we venture into, we thought that we are going to be okay, because we are educated, we financially fit. Yeah? But it doesn't really guarantee, because the most important thing is we need to educate our mind, our mental, emotional, psychological, not just only physical needs. Yeah? So that's why the understanding of these needs is very important. Are very important. That's why Surah An-Nisa verse 1, yeah, Allah tell us about, ya ayuhan nas. I mean, Allah mentioned very clearly that all of you are equal. Yeah? You come from the same source. You come from the same source, that is Adam. Therefore, when we realize that we come from the same source, whether the name is Anwar or whether the name is Zainah ke, Salmah ke, whatever it is, we are the same. Yeah? We come from the same root. Therefore, why we need to cause violence to others? Why we need to abuse one another? Yeah. So this is wrong. So the understanding that abusing one another is wrong, doing something to others is wrong. This is something which is very, very important. So when Madam went to Singapore for a research project, I went to one center. This is, as Madam Dr. Sham mentioned, about support system. Yeah. So in Singapore, they have this one center that provides support system to the victims as well as the perpetrators. So when I asked them, how do you measure your success when the victims or the perpetrators come to see you, especially the perpetrators, the one who caused the violence? And he said that if he could educate the person to know or to understand that violence is wrong, that is sufficient. That is actually an achievement, not sufficient, but at least an achievement. But it requires, of course, not just only the understanding, but how to make that understanding sustain. Yeah? How do we continue with the understanding that we need to respect one another? Of course, this requires iman, that requires knowledge, that requires religious cautiousness. So this is very, very important, Madam Rasilah. Yeah? Okay, then we have to be open to advice. So we have to put our ego aside, because most of the problems that relates to imbalanced relationship in the marriage is because of the ego. Either men or women, it's the same thing. But of course, men, everybody must have an ego. We need to have an ego, because That's how we protect our dignity again, but not too much to the extent that we cannot listen to one another, to the extent that we cannot tolerate to one another. Yeah. So if you have a problem, for example, go and seek advice from people who can give advice. If you have a marital conflict, don't go to the imam. Imam cannot give an advice. So you need to go to the counselor, yeah, to the people who are able to resolve your marital conflict. Yeah. For example, because this is always what Madam experience. When they come to us, oh, I have go to the imam here, I go to the imam there. Of course, you can have varieties of opinion there, but it doesn't resolve your problems. Okay, so and then another thing, Madam Rasa, is also important is that when we talk about spouse, we also have to talk about children. Yeah? Respect for children. Yeah? Parents have to respect the children. Of course, children have to respect the parents. But how this respect could be nurtured? Yeah? Of course, it goes to the relationship. Goes to the relationship between husband and wife. It started from there. Yeah, and then that's why how the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam teach us. Why the boys should be close to the mother. Yeah, boys should be close to the mother because the mother teach them how to treat your wife properly. Yeah, how to be nice to your wife. That's what the mother should be. Yeah, but how the father should be close to the daughter. Father should be close to the daughter. Why? Because women needs a man in the life. Yeah? So at the beginning, of course, the father should care for the wife because women need protection, women need care. So we see how the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam treat Fatima. Yeah? Whenever Fatima entered into his house, he would he stand up, and greet Fatima. You see, yeah, and then he kissed Fatima. Um, he cuddled Fatima. And then at that time, this culture is alien to the Arabs. And the companion asked prophets, why you did this to your daughter? Yeah? Because as we see, this is not part of culture. And in fact, I think in Malay society also, it is not part of our culture as well. Yeah? But the prophet say, Man la yarham la yurham. Yeah? Those who do not respect others will not be respected. I think this is the law of the nature, law of the nature, where you need to respect others in order for others to respect you. This is what you call the law of the nature. Okay, so I think Madam Rasela, looking from the cases that Madam have handled among the clients that come to us, this is very, very much lacking. This is very much lacking in us nowadays. Why? Why? Because we are not brought up with the values. So the value system. So we develop our own value system, not the religious system, the value, not the religious value. So the value system that we inherit from our culture, or we inherit from our readings, we inherit from our environment. Of course, environment and culture are very important that shape the way we think. Without we realize that, it is wrong. So that's why it is very important, Madam Rasela, since we have the opportunity to discuss this thing openly. As Madam said just now, we come from different backgrounds and different cultures. So always reflect ourselves. If we have these negative values, we correct it. Be prepared to correct it. Always seek guidance from our what do you call it? In we are gifted with the imam. We are gifted with iman, Islam, which has a lot of values that should shape our values. Okay, so Madam Rasela, the have the build the value system in us, not the value of our parents, not the value of our. What I'm talking about the bad values in our environment. So have the Islamic values in us. So these values basically it works like likes. It works like likes. So when we have this value system will spread. It's just like the concept of iman. For those who close to us will also feel what they call it, the positive values. So it is like, I think in science we call it negative what? Negative what? Ion or something like that. And I'm not that good in, I forgot already like all those terms. I remember sections very well rather than rather than all those things. But it is the science actually tell us about how what we call it good values can influence others. So if we have that culture, the good cultures, that cultures will shape our family system. So that's why Madam said just now, preventive measures is very, very important. Rather than at the end of the day, the law, of course, always at the end to help us whenever others cannot help. But preventive measures, this is something that we need to nurture. We need to, I mean, good values, that's something that we need to nurture. So in order to prevent all these violence happen in our not just only in our family, but also in our society. Because what comes from the society, actually, what happened in the society comes from the individual person, and also from the family itself. Yeah. If we have our parents who are abusive, so maybe we could take this opportunity to rehab our parents as well. So don't bring these values in our for future generations, because that is bad. That is bad. Okay, I think that's about what Madam need to share with you at the moment. But of course, if there's any specific questions, I hope I'll be able to respond to it. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, Prof. And thank you, Prof, for the sharing just now, so that we can see the importance of value are very much appreciated in engaging this kind of concern. Maybe we can have a Q&A session. We are almost reaching the end, but I think we can have like around 10 minutes of Q&A, around 8 to 10 minutes of Q&A. So for those participants and audiences who are having the question, we will be much appreciated if you can direct the question, meaning that if you can state which speaker that you are addressing the question to, so that we can have a more meaningful discussion from each speaker and sharing from each panel for today. So we can open the question. Maybe technical committee can have. Okay, we have one from Brother Amjad Rozi. So is there any law amendment for abusive people to go for rehabilitation, especially in Malaysia? So maybe I open if Doctor or Prof to answer, because this is open direction question. Maybe Doctor or Prof.
Maybe I answer first. Maybe Dr.
Okay.
Cham can add
Boleh,
later. Yeah. The latest amendment under the Domestic Violence Act. Dr. Shah already mentioned about Domestic Violence Act, which is the main reference for domestic violence law, apart from the penal code. Yeah? But Domestic Violence Act is not a criminal law, because the idea of Domestic Violence Act is actually to make the people reconcile. That's the idea of Domestic Violence Act. That's why it talks more about protection and so on. But what is lacking in the law right now is actually, as Madam mentioned just now, is the counseling part, which is very important actually, because what we can see from other countries, rehabilitation and counseling comes together. So right now, for abusive people, we have in the law under Section 11, if I'm not mistaken, with the amendment in 2017, it provides for, but this is the thing, it provides for the victim to go for rehabilitation, not so much for the perpetrator. Yeah. Then rehabilitation is conducted by Department of Social Welfare under the Ministry of Women, in which I think Madam Russell is a little bit restrictive at the moment. It's not so much what we call it, reach out to the society, because people still complaining about violence happen. And Madam myself, because I actually directly involved with the public when it comes to marital conflict, especially again, and then we still have quite a number of cases in the context of divorce among Malaysians, regardless of Muslim or non-Muslims, due to violence. And of course, violence is not something spelled out, of course, in their in what they call it when they go to the court, they just say misunderstanding. They must say they say that this is misunderstanding, but actually behind it, most of the time, if it is not physical abuse, it always connected with psychological abuse. So if it is psychological abuse, you can just imagine these people need treatment, rehabilitation, yeah, need treatment. And if we do not provide for the persons to go for treatment, like anger management, for example, yeah, this is what we mean financial support system do. It's not so much well in place. It is there, but not well in place, organized to the extent that the people outside out there will see, oh, I can get help from here. This is not so much what they call it, felt uh, by the people at large outside there. I think maybe because of the ignorance, also one part of it, ignorance of our society about the law itself. Because the always the common problem that we face among the society at large, when they don't have the problem, they don't care to look into, yeah, they don't care to find for information, yeah. Only when they experience the problem, then they will go and search for the information. So our society need to be what they call it, educated in terms of awareness. Awareness. I think we need to have more awareness program. There are a lot of awareness program organized by NGOs, but it covers a certain aspect because Madam also involved in NGO. That's why I know we cannot cater everybody. Yeah, we cannot cater everybody. We can cater only a certain group of people. Yeah. But to answer the questions by Amjad just now, yes, we have the provisions in the current law, but maybe the other question is how far that it is being enforced lah. Penguatkuasaan, yeah, how far it is being implemented. This is something that we need to really see because the amendment is very new. Still, I would say new in the context that 2017 is quite new, but maybe more data that need to be collected in order to see the effectiveness of this provision. Yeah. Maybe Dr. Shah will need to add more on that.
Doctor, we cannot hear you.
Okay, I
Okay.
think Prof has actually clearly explained the answer to Amjad's question. Is there any law amendment for abusive people? Basically, the Domestic Violence Act look into rehabilitation for the victim. And earlier on, there was a provision with regard to counselling, where both parties will be given counselling, and it will be more effective lah, I would say. However, when we identify the root cause of domestic violence, for example, it is due to alcoholism or drugs, especially drugs. Of course lah, those who are associated with drugs will be sent to a rehab center, drug rehabilitation center. Okay, so the kind of rehabilitation is for specifically for drug treatment. Okay, so we have to go back to the what causes the domestic violence in each case, because the factors are numerous. According to the Bukit Aman, there are at least 14 factors. Okay, 14 factors. And the top one is normally perselisihan faham. Okay, they have no mutual understanding between partners. And this could be due to so many reasons, the way they were brought up, the society under which they are living, and then, their religious background. There can be, differences created. And sometimes, perkahwinan campur, this can also create misunderstanding and also miscommunication. Okay, and sometimes you have to look at the character of the person. So if, let's say, misunderstanding is the root cause, then of course rehabilitation is not suitable. Okay, but then on the other hand, if the cause of the domestic violence is actually drugs or alcohol, then we can treat by sending them to a rehab center. Okay, and the law is also fair. It also provides rehabilitation to the victim as provided in Section 11, Clause 1 of Domestic Violence Act. But that is based on consent. If the victim agreeable for the rehab course, then she can go for it. Normally, the victim are women lah. Okay, all right. I think that's all.
Mm. Maybe just Madam nak add one more regarding counselling just now, yeah, because last time the only problem is that it has not been made mandatory lah. Mandatory mean compulsory, yeah. So it is just option like Dr. Shah mentioned. You need consent. Jadi of course people do not want to go for this kind of centers because they will say that oh stigma kan. Oh you must have a problem why you need to go to this. So this is something for which I think we need to look into uh, further amendments to the law so that it can be made more effective. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you, Dr. and Prof, for the question, for answering the question. I think we can have the last question from Brother Muhammad Akmal Osman. How far these media socials can be the factor of domestic violence? Because some partners do not favor to post everything on media social, especially the TikTok dance and etc. So maybe Prof or Doctor would like to respond to this question. How can media social influence the domestic violence?
Well, Madam,
As to continue a question, as I had some through a current
yeah,
issue that this kind of activity may partner to correct all that. Okay.
yeah, of course, of course. That's why I think it is not media revealing something in social media about marital relationship is bad. It is bad because even the hadith mentions that you shouldn't discuss things. You should not reveal. However bad uh, it is not to be revealed in media. But get someone who. But it doesn't mean that you cannot talk to others. But talk to someone who can be trusted, who can keep your secret. Not someone who can what we call it or kata apa batu api I remember Madam what they call it handle this one case quite some time ago where it is just a divorce like divorce between the couple. They have already divorced but because the husband pronounced divorce outside the court at that time the wife just had a baby, this is of course psychological abuse juga lah just had a baby but he keep on insisting he wants to get married to the one this kind of a thing. Even though I'm not talking about polygamy is wrong, but to some extent that at this time round he's supposed to take care of the wife who just had a baby. And then what happened was the wife complained the matters to the other to her close friend. I don't want to mention this close friend, but if I mention this, maybe probably But anyway, then this lady said, "What if it's happened to me? I will throw acid to him." It doesn't make things better. It doesn't make things better. What more we talk about it in the social media? Everybody knows, even though they might know who is the person, but they keep on digging and digging. Then we could see there's so many cases that it end up in the divorce because when you're not happy about the marriage, you talk about it in the media and so on. Yeah? So the Quran already mentioned. That's why I made the mention Surah An-Nisa, Nisa verse 35, verse 34. It says very clearly when you have a problem, get someone to advise you. Or you try to advise among between yourself first. So you cannot get someone to advise you. It doesn't say that you talk to the whole world, talk to the whole world. So I think this is something we need to stop. We need to educate our society. When it is about marital problems, either it is good or bad. I think this is not something that you need to share with the public at large. Mm. That's what Madam can say.
Okay,
All right.
can I add a
Okay, maybe Doctor. Sure.
Okay, because this is something very in because everybody doing TikTok dance. So even teachers at school, So sometimes, I don't know, maybe because of the trend and we become the victim of the trend. Okay. And we have to act according to our age. That is very important. Even though the thing is very relevant, very in nowadays, but not everything is, is to be followed, you know. It is why we will become the victim of the trend. And we have actually social stress, work stress as the main, as one of the cause of what do you call factor that created or trigger domestic violence. But so far, whether posting some status in social media can also be part of the factor is still not yet measurable, you know. But I believe, it can come under the first main factor that trigger domestic violence, that is perselisihan faham lah. According to Bukit Aman, perselisihan faham is the main factor, the main reason why domestic violence happen in our society. Thus, what we have to do is that, to understand our partner. When you're talking about partner, isn't it? Partner mean legally married, so you have to understand your partner. And it is actually extremely unethical when you relate back to your subject. It is very unethical actually to post status and sometimes you tag along your husband, you know. For example, you have a husband who is smoking, okay, and you thought that that is how you can actually educate your husband. So every time there is, bad impact, negative impact about smoking, okay, let's say there is a rise of cancer related disease due to smoking, and then you will put your husband's name, for instance lah. But bear in mind that when you tag your husband related to smoking in your article, what would be the impression of the rest of the world? That means most likely your husband is a smoker. Betul? So it looks like very small, but the impact is huge. You are in a way exposing what probably your husband doesn't like. No? So the best is don't use social media as a problem solver because it creates more problems. It is adding up more problems, actually piling problems to, so if let's say and I think it's not actually proper lah to do TikTok, to do dancing, even though you are wearing properly, because you have to act according to your age, maturity, because you have children, growing children, and they look up on you, you know and they have to distinguish, people outside and from their respected parents. So if there is no difference between you and your children, doing TikTok along the way, I think that is something very serious. You need to think about it. All right, that's all. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. And that's a very good insight for us. Maybe, okay, I think we can have at least one more question. I'm very sorry because I was notified that we have many questions actually. But yelah, the time is already exceeded. But I think we can entertain at least one. So if enslaved is considered domestic violence, what if the wife willingly do all the tasks at home, as it like the norm already in the society due to the culture and mentality of some people? Thank you. Maybe Prof. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the questions. I did mention that just now. Yeah, based on the case that came to me. Yes, basically, because the thing is sometimes we say, yeah, the wife willingly. Yeah, this is what happened. The wife willingly do because she thought that she has to do all these things. Yeah, she has. This is what is shapes our society now. This is what we call it patriarchal society, because we shape our culture in that way. Yeah, but of course, if the relationship is okay, yeah, in the sense that even though the wife is doing that, the husband also is helping, I think it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But in that context, just take for example like this. This is another case. Madam have a lot of cases, but this is another case. For example, this couple, but they are very nice couple lah. Huh? But this couple, the understanding was um, both are working, and then the husband and wife, the husband and wife are working, but the husband, control the what they call it, the money, meaning that they have joint account. Um, for some people, having joint account is okay, but this is what, based on my experience, if the husband and wife is working, have your own account, separate account, manage your account independently. So in this particular case, they have joint account, because the understanding is when the wife is working, wife need to have someone to to what they got to handle these things. So whenever she behave in such a way, whenever she understand that way, so everything the husband control, they have one account, and she didn't even have a ATM card. So at one point of time, she complained to me. She said to me, my mother somehow, said that, my daughter is working, but I never receive any money from her. Something like that. Old people, again, it's not that she wants the money, but sometimes when you have old people who actually in need of like some money from the daughter, I mean, which is common lah. I'm talking about a norm. And then she said to me that she doesn't have an ATM. I said to her, go and do your go to the bank and have your own ATM card. That's what I said to her. So this is the kind of a thing that we thought it is okay, but when it is, that's why in Islam we have rules, and regulations. That's why we must know what is the barrier. We must know what is do's and don'ts. Even though between husband and wife, there must be a barrier as well. Even though most of the time we do things together, but there must be a barrier. So the husband, even though in the current situations where we have mostly husbands earns less than the wife, for example, because financial gaps, okay? Madam kata just now that Madam also received a number of cases where the man now has been abused by the wife who earns more than him. So if we know the barrier, for example, the wife has to respect the husband as a husband, and then the husband, even though the amount of money maybe he earns less than the wife, but he has to perform his responsibility according to what he can afford, and the wife cannot impose more, and the wife has to help. So I think if that culture develop in that particular relationship, I think that's okay. That's okay. But when we enter into the marriage with an expectation, that's the problem. So we enter into marriage, I mean, we cannot have an expectation. So expectation in the context that, when I go into the marriage, it must be like this, like this, like this. No, it cannot be like that. It cannot be like that, because we cannot determine our future. Allah decides our future again. But we cannot decide our future. But what we can do is to put an effort and play our role as a husband and wife in the context of family relationship according to the law that has been prescribed for us. So we have to know our boundaries. So the case that Madam mentioned just now to you is just a good example. Maybe the wife thought that as a wife, I must do this, I must do that, I must do that. That's what her understanding. But in actual facts, that understanding actually lead herself to the enslaved culture tadi. She actually enslaved herself to be treated like that, and the husband feel that I must be treated like that, which is wrong from the eyes of Islamic law, because in Islam, husband has to protect the wife and the children. What kind of protection? To make sure that the interest, the welfare of the wife and the children are taken care of. Not to the extent of I must be treated like a king. You are a servant, I'm a king. The servant and king relationship must not exist in family relationship. So it must be what we call respect, tolerance. This is what Islam all about. Respect, tolerance. Of course, helping one another. That's why in the hadith it says that if the wife is earning more, she needs to understand that whatever that she gives to the family is barakah. It is a reward, not as a responsibility, but as a reward. but they must know the boundaries. Yeah, they must know the boundaries. I think if we, that's why kursus perkahwinan, when you go on to go in marriage, I think need to be improved lah, need to be improved in terms of the understanding. It's not about laughing here and there. It is that's what the concept of the law relating to responsibilities, duties, responsibilities, husband and wife must be understood correctly. Yeah, I think that's what Medan can respond. Maybe Dr. Sham can add further. Yeah.
Okay, I have little bit only to add. It is sometimes the way we created
Mm.
the standard, okay, that will become the basis that one might look at it as
Mm.
enslaving. You know, so the standard is different actually. Now we cannot use like standard of reasonable man test. What is reasonable for me might not be reasonable for you. For some people, for example lah, preparing what do you call, all the needs for the husbands, from head to toe, even like putting the tie, and even like getting ready everything, the watch, the socks, polish the shoes and everything, to a person is something like, it's like her responsibility, and she think that that is uh, you know uh, as her duty lah to do, you know but for others who view that, they might look at like, there shouldn't be, there should be equality between male and female, and nowadays, when husband and wife are earning together, so why we should have this kind of enslavement lah, because both are working together. We go out together, and sometimes the wife earn more than husband, but on top of that, the wife have to do more also at home, doing house chores, taking care of the children. So for some women, this, the way the other women are treating the husband seems like enslaving herself lah, you know so it is actually depending, the perspective is from one person to another, but I believe that what is more important, the willingness on the part of husband and wife. Some wife is okay with it, some they are not, some they are not. So the best is not to create a very high standard from the very beginning, because when you have created such a high standard, the expectation will be there. So when in the future you don't do, that will become a source of, problem. Your husband start comparing. When you got married initially, you used to do this, you take care of my clothing very well. But now after, 10 years of getting married, you are not doing anything, the standard is getting lower, and that can become a triggering factor lah, perselisihan faham and things like that. Okay, so I think whether you think what you are doing is a kind of enslaving yourself is a question of fact. It is from one case to another, from one situation to another. What might be for others like enslaving herself, but might not be the same for another person. Okay, all right, that's all.
Right, thank you very much, Prof and Doctor, for the sharing and clarification for the questions. I would like to thank to all the participants who sent the questions to us. I believe there are many, still many. Maybe we can have some further question, because I think personally for me, I would like to have more, but I think the time has already exceeded the session. So my apologies to all the participants. And I would also like to apologize if we have been dragging, I think, around few minutes. But I think this is a very meaningful discussion for all of us. So, and thank you to all participants who stay until now, because I was informed that we have around 100 participants. So thank you very much to all. And thank you to Dr. and Prof for all the sharing and the clarification given to us. And as from the side of the committee, I would like to apologize during our session for today if there are any shortcomings or inconvenience caused all the goods are actually come from Allah, and all the shortcomings come from our mistakes, and we will try to improve it better after this. So I think that's all for today. We have no okay. I think that's all. The signal for me. So we end our webinar today with the recitation of Tasbih Kafarah and Surah As.
Subhanallah. Shada.
Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum, and thank you very much to all.
Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.